All right, let's get this show on the road, so to speak. Uh 5 days in a row with the podcast. So welcome to the Colonel and Kid podcast. I am the kid, Gregory L. Heitmann. That's me, your host for the Colonel and the Kid podcast, featuring the Colonel, Colonel Edwin P. Hagen Jr., or more specifically, Lieutenant Colonel Edwin P. Hagen Jr., my grandfather, or as a lot of people call him, the Colonel. I just called him Grandpa. But this is the memoir. This whole podcast is based on the memoir I wrote about and dedicated to my grandfather, about my relationship with the Colonel, or just Grandpa as I knew him. And today is a big chapter because this is episode 27, chapter 27 of the memoir, and it's called The Military. So it really ties in to one of his nicknames. And one of the things that I guess I most knew him for was being a military man, an Army officer, and just interesting to me. And this is a long chapter, so it's probably just going to be the just the reading of the chapter is going to be the single thing that I do. No extra discussion about the recurring topics I have. No musical update, no license to podcast, no verbal abuse. Just the chapter. And I believe this is going to be, well, this is the season 2 of the podcast, volume 2 of the memoir, and it's chapter 27. So I'm just going to get right into it. So we don't run out of time. Well, I'm not going to run out of time, but I don't really want to go too much over an hour because I think I'll start losing my voice. Getting kind of dry country around here lately. It's like summertime in the wintertime in the desert, so it's dry. So get the pre-drink of water. I just pre-read the chapter, so I should be somewhat familiar with it. Should be able to get through okay. I wasn't really that impressed with my writing this time because it was a little bit scattered, a little jumped around quite a bit. I probably should have broken it down into maybe 2 or 3 sections or 2 or 3 individual chapters themselves, but I didn't do that. So we're going to just live with what we got and read that chapter into the record. So here we go. The Colonel and the Kid memoir, chapter 27, The Military. And as always, we start with a quote. Quote, "The most important single ingredient in the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people." End quote. And that is Theodore Roosevelt, 26th President of the United States and former U.S. Army Colonel. And I put I used that quote to start the chapter, and I did a lot of just Googling quotes to start and end the chapters in this memoir. And this one I thought was good because I had that last edition on there that, of course, Theodore Roosevelt was the 26th president, but he's also an Army colonel. And thought that might just blend in perfectly with what I wanted to talk about here because, if nothing else, Grandpa got along with people. I mean, I don't know if there's anybody that I didn't know of anybody that he had a problem with or grudge against or whatever. I was a little kid, of course. I wouldn't have known these things, but it seemed like everyone in the small town of Siston, South Dakota, knew Grandpa and would say hi, recognize him, and he was just that, pillar of the community. And I guess I always admired that. I think that's one of the things that he hit upon was the formula. Formula for success, according to Theodore Roosevelt, is knowing how to get along with people. Sums up Grandpa right there. So let's get the chapter started. If there's one thing that is abundantly clear, It's that there's a good reason I never became a journalist, because I keep burying the lead. The primary identifying factor that is synonymous with my grandpa is the U.S. Army. He never made any fuss of his military career or drew any attention to that aspect of his life. He did have his collection of souvenirs displayed in his den, but those things were for him. That's the way it seemed. Maybe it would have been a different experience for me if I'd asked more questions about his military service. It was my understanding that Grandpa was in Germany in World War II. The details I have are that he assisted in processing German soldiers surrendering at the end of the war. Grandpa collected a few souvenirs that, in today's world, can cause an emotional stir for many. One item is a dagger taken from a German SS soldier, Hitler's special police force. This dagger includes the engraving, "Mein Ehre ist true," on the blade, which translates to, "My honor is called loyalty." The other item was a German Luger, and I add parenthetically, there's actually two German Lugers that I reference here. And this leads us to the first photo of the chapter, and this is a repeat photo pretty much that I've used before because it was featured in the den in the city house, the house that Grandma and Grandpa owned in Siston, South Dakota, before they moved out into the country, just on the a couple miles out of town in Siston, South Dakota. But this is a photo of the den, and what I want to point out, let me read the caption, and then I'll kind of direct your attention to a couple other things. And the caption reads, "Grandpa's Den, circa 1967. Dickie Hansen, Grandpa's nephew, son of Richard Hansen. Front and center, Jackie Blado, my cousin, Aunt Kathy's daughter, sitting on Richard Hansen's lap. And Richard Hansen sitting down there, that's Dickie's dad. And then in the bottom corner of the photo is Buzz Hortness, and that would be Richard's son-in-law and Dickie's brother-in-law. The World War II souvenirs are displayed on simple wooden plaques. And so this is the picture of the den, and it's got kind of off the left is the taxidermy pronghorn, and then behind Dickie in the middle of the picture there is the TV and the the silver aluminum Christmas tree that I had displayed behind me for a while. And it's a classic orange 1970s orange curtains in the den covering a window, and it's just like a blondish wood paneled den that my grandpa had there. And just below the mounted ring-necked pheasant, the state bird of South Dakota, a nice rooster it's basically a similar pose to the logo of the South Dakota Game, Fish, and Parks, but right below that is the, I guess, the spoils of war that Grandpa collected from some of the prisoners that he processed as the German army surrendered. And the top one, there's three. There's a little triangle of plaques. There's the dagger, and then two Luger pistols. They're all mounted on wooden plaques and displayed very cleanly, and without a lot of fanfare, just on the corner of that wall. And I don't really know much about the actual, you know, the actual makers and models of the weapons that he's got there, but they were significant enough souvenirs and mementos of the war that Grandpa mounted them on plaques and saved them and displayed them for a long time before it kind of really fell out of favor. And it's kind of too bad. I think I'll talk about that a little more here. Then we got another second set of photos. I'm not sure the way I did this chapter. I think this was supposed to be a caption. So I'm going to read this, what I believe is supposed to be a caption. It's not written as a caption on here, but it's like it's just part of the text of the memoir. But I'm gonna consider that it was a mistake, that it was supposed to be a caption, and I'll read that and then describe the pictures. Later on, Grandpa got some velvet-lined wooden display boxes with glass covers for the pistols. I think the pistol spent most of their time stored in a closet when Grandma and Grandpa moved to their country house. So these are the German Lugers that Grandpa collected, and they're mounted, they're kind of like wired in, braced in these little velvet display boxes. And the picture on the left is I'm not exactly sure what it is. I guess it's a P30. It says stamped as a P38, and it looks like it's almost like a model 1911, a Colt pistol, the semi-automatic type, but it's got more just a distinguished barrel, and it's black with a brown wooden, or I don't know if it's a poly material handle, and it's got my grandpa's got his a dog tag that he had, one of his dog tags mounted on the bottom of the box there too, and then also there's a German military medal. It's a blue ribbon with a cross, and then it's got a swastika in the center of the cross and like a little wreath around in the background. Everything's mounted on that. And then the other pistol on the right side picture, it's more that traditional Luger pistol that you picture with that the Germans had, German officers would have. It's got that very stout barrel, and I don't know if I'm not sure if it's a wood grip or it's just some poly material non-slip grip on there. Very, a little more compact pistol, and it's also in the box. It's got like I guess it's like a military medal that a German soldier would have had probably, and it's the Iron Cross, that very recognizable Iron Cross medal, kind of a flared. I don't know if can't remember if it's like more like the Irish cross almost, but it's black and it's got silver outlined across and flared arms on there. But it's nice displays. And then below that, here's another picture, and this is I'll read the caption here. Caption reads, "Here's a photo of the dagger that was on display even later on in Grandpa's den in the country house." And this is also that later on Grandpa had or acquired a little velvet lined display box, glass covered display box. And this is the dagger. It's unsheathed, and it's got the blade with the point facing to the left, and then below it, it's got the sheath of the dagger facing to the right, and the dagger itself has a little German ribbon on it with an iron cross. In the center of that iron cross, it's like a little swastika set on a diagonal, and it's got the emblem of the Nazi military. I guess I don't know if it's just a Nazi government or Nazi military stamped into the handle of that dagger, and then it's got the engraving on the blade. You can clearly see it's Main Air Ice True, and of course that translates to my honor is called loyalty, at least according to what I Googled. So, but then the dagger's little handle, or there's like a little decorative little, I don't know if it's like a little grip or whatever you want to call it, just a little rope handle, but rope, it's a ribbon handle, and it's got like the SS, that little lightning type SS for their secret police that they used, and the skull and crossbones in metal, like almost little metal buckles on that. And then it's got another dog tag from my grandpa with his name on there. And then there's another little pin I can't read. It's got like an eagle in the middle. I don't know if that's another symbol for the SS, like maybe like a button that they wore on their uniform or something like that. So anyway, back to the chapter. I remember Grandpa displaying the dagger and the Lugers Each item was mounted separately on matching beautifully finished oak plaques. They were displayed off and on in the den before being retired to storage. The spoils of war, as they say. In modern times, the display of those items can be twisted into a claim of neo-Nazi fetishism by people that have no understanding of how those items came into Grandpa's possession. Shame on them for failing to acknowledge or even knowing history. Those items are still in the family, and they will honor Grandpa's World War II service for at least as long as I'm still alive. It makes me sad that these items can't be displayed as a reminder of what the greatest generation sacrificed for the world. So we have another photo, and I think this photo showed up previously. And I'll read the caption and then talk about it. This photo, previously used to show some of the ham radio equipment, shows the dagger on display in Grandpa's basement den next to the bar at the country house. Note that Grandpa has a Minnesota Vikings helmet sticker obscuring the swastika. And I put this on here, this photo again, reused it to talk about this. It's like it's in the display case with the cover closed, hanging on the wall next to one of the a print. And I'll talk about this print more specifically later in this chapter. But front and center in the photo, I think the main photo was that of the cat. I don't know if that was Tommy. I think that was Tommy laying up on the bar down in Grandpa's den in the country house, and there's a photo taken of the cat, and the background happens to be the dagger on display in Grandpa's den. I don't know if he ever displayed the pistols out in the country house, but I don't know. May have been some worry about those being displayed and somebody breaking in out there in the more remote area, where if they were out on vacation or something like that, that the house might be broken into and stolen. So maybe they're stashed away someplace. But anyway, I just you can tell by some of the tone of my writing here that I feel bad that Grandpa couldn't display his souvenirs like maybe he wanted to. It's sort of a proud token of the accomplishment that the greatest generation achieved by saving the world against Nazis, and at least preventing the world from speaking German or Japanese. So anyway, back to the chapter. Grandpa personally spent years away from family, getting commissioned as an Army officer, serving in World War II and Korea. Eventually, he served and retired from the South Dakota Army National Guard as a lieutenant colonel. A distinguished military career indeed. He was the colonel. I'm not sure if he was retired from military before I was even old enough to understand his service. He may have retired before I was even born. Grandpa was an unassuming man, never one for attention. I think he was honored to be referred to as the colonel. Here I have another photo of another souvenir he collected from his time processing German prisoners. I'll read the caption and try to discuss a little bit. A German rifle Grandpa confiscated from a war prisoner. This rifle sat in the Deerfeet gun rack below the taxidermy mount of Sam in Grandpa's den. First in Siston, then in the country house, for as long as I knew Grandpa. So this rifle, I saw it there every time I go visit. It was in the resting in the feet of below the mount of taxidermy deer Sam. And this is it's a wooden stock and forearm, one piece of wood, looks like. And it's a German rifle. I'm not even sure what caliber it is. It's actually sitting right over here in the corner of my office. And it's got a scope mounted on it. I'm not sure if that scope came with it when he got it. I don't think so. And it's got a weird sling type mechanism. I'm not even sure how that's supposed to work, but it's like built in through the stock, not like a ring at the butt of the gun, but it's like a little grooves sawn into the stock of the rifle. And it's not really attached other than tied around the sling is just tied around the fore end of the gun. It's got like a barrel cover too, so I guess prevents some dirt or debris from getting in the barrel, and you can flip that up just when you shoot. And then it's actually got like a flip up type sight for, I guess, longer range shooting. It's got the scope mounted on it. It's a bolt action, and I mean, it looks like it's in pretty good shape for having gone through a war. And then I have another photo here, and I'll read the caption and then talk about it a little bit. The caption reads, "This is a detail from the rifle shown above. Stamped on the bolt assembly is a Nazi symbol." And I guess this is the Nazi party symbol, I guess. And it's got the eagle's wings spread with the head facing to the left in just sort of a real simple design. But then there's a circle with the swastika. It's like part of the eagle sitting on the swastika. So that's part of I guess, the German manufacturing and official German acceptance that that rifle was part of the country and the army and everything else. So very interesting to me that that we still have this. And I don't know, this is one of those things that I think it's a good reminder to everyone. We shouldn't hide this stuff away. This should be out in the public, probably in a museum that people could see. And I'm sure there's some in collections that are publicly displayed, but to me it's just the perfect reminder that, hey, we are human beings, and we human beings do bad things, and it takes other human beings to stop bad things from happening. And a good reminder that the good human beings need to tame the bad human beings. Kind of reminds me of like the Confederate flag and stuff, and how people want to tear that down, and all the Confederate statues. It's like, no, I just totally disagree with that idea that those should be put up on display, publicly put out there, and say, we cannot forget about the dumb things that people have done before. And just a reminder that we can't slide backwards into that same sort of history. And just to tear it all down, it's like the first step in trying to forget about it. So then you can just accidentally repeat it, or maybe intentionally repeat it. I don't know. I just think that there's two different philosophies on that. They're just diametrically opposed, or people just want to get rid of it and pretend like it never happened, destroy all those symbols of the wrong side. And I mean, we're just lucky enough that that the right side won against the Nazis and against slavery, if you want to call it that. I guess it's more against, the Civil War is more of, people want to jump to that easy conclusion that it was about slavery, but it was more about states' rights, and whether that this was a federal connected government, and then the federal government had supremacy over all the states, and that we had a United States of America, and that you couldn't secede from this country, and you couldn't go out on your own, that no, you were part of this country. That was the battle. And that battle was won by, the federalist sidings, if you want to call it that no, we are the United States, and no matter how much you disagree with, with the country's positions, you can't just decide that your state's going to leave the country. Well, we're one country. So anyway, get off my soapbox. This was my worry about doing this chapter, because I think it was over. I want to say it was like about 2,500 words. So this is going to be the longest chapter that I've been tried to read in, and I was worried that I would get off of my soapbox, and I have. And I'll try to not do that, but we're already 24 minutes in, and I'll try to stick to the script. But back to the chapter. Here we go. The military shaped Grandpa's life. I also have that in common with Grandpa. The military shaped my life. Not that I did such things like he did, saving the world, but I served in the Army and Air National Guard. I had 2 years in the South Dakota Army National Guard and 6 years in the South Dakota Air National Guard. I had 4 years enlisted and 4 years as an officer. When I graduated from college in 1992, the economy was bad and I couldn't find a job. I did find a job at Walmart, And after being laid off from my seasonal work at Walmart in the winter of 1992, I needed something to get me out of the rut that I was in. Joining the Army National Guard gave me experience that translated positively to my resume and opened doors that gave me my career. I can honestly say that without my military experience, I wouldn't have achieved the career success I feel I've had, which some might debate. Yeah. So we have a couple more photos here, and I'll read the caption here, and some of the best photos of the whole memoir itself. The caption reads, "Portraits of Grandpa and Grandma, circa 1943. I believe this was Grandpa's official photo for his commission as an officer. I suspect Grandma sat for a professional photo for a matching set. I'm thankful that they had the foresight to get these photos. These are priceless images to me." And on the left is my grandpa in his Army uniform, and he's wearing the bus driver type hat, not just the regular folding cap or the simple cap. It's got that visor, the little black shiny visor, like the old style policemen would wear. And these are black and white photos. And Grandpa's looking towards the right, he's not looking at the camera. He's looking to the right of the camera, and then uh, on the right photo, they're not posed together. They're separate photos. My grandma's posing for the photo, and she's in kind of like a black dress, but it's got like a white frontis chest piece, and looks like she's wearing, maybe that's just a button on there from the dress, a little black bow around the neck, and she looks very beautiful. And she's looking to the left, so they're looking opposite directions in the way that I have these photos set up. But very nice photos. I'm glad that they were saved. Like I said, priceless to me. And I guess surprisingly or not surprisingly, that these photos, they're not. Neither one is smiling. There's like serious photos, and their mouth is closed, just tight-lipped on it, and looking a lot more serious than I guess. When I think of photos, professional photos like that, maybe you want to be a little more happy. I don't know, but Grandpa looks exceptionally young, and my grandma, she was young too, but she looks more mature in my eyes. But back to the chapter. I have only two military stories that I can recall Grandpa sharing. One was while he was in Germany occupying the country at the end of the war, and they were sorting out Germans after the surrender. As I remember the telling of the story, Grandpa joined a fellow officer in a luxurious house being used as a local U.S. Army command post. Again, the spoils of war came into play. The house had an extensive wine cellar, including some carbonated wine. Grandpa's new friend demonstrated the evening pastime of launching corks from the bubbly up into a fancy chandelier high overhead as a contest. Successful or not in landing the cork into the glass dome of the chandelier, the reward was still the same: a cup of the bubbly. The other military story is not quite as rosy. Grandpa talked about the responsibility of command. A training deployment with the South Dakota Army National Guard took him and his unit to Alaska for mountaineer training. I remember Grandpa recounting the gravity of the challenge he was about to undertake as he spoke to the commander of the unit that was rotating out, as Grandpa's unit was rotating into the area for training. His fellow commander wished Grandpa luck, explaining they had lost 2 men during the 2 weeks of the training. Lost, as in 2 men had died. This was no joke. Not some walk in the park summer camp for citizen soldiers to get away from home and pick up some extra pay. Hiking into the high mountain altitude where the oxygen is scarce, scaling rock cliffs and crossing roaring rivers and streams presented the challenge after challenge. Grandpa said his unit came out unscathed, but he was weighed down by the words from the outgoing commander his entire deployment. And here, I have another photo, and I'll read the caption and then try to describe. And this is Lieutenant Colonel Hagen, my grandpa, in Alaska, enjoying the shelter of a lean-to as they take a break from training, circa 1966. So Grandpa's sitting there, and they got their parkas on, and there's snow in the background, and they like a little lean-to with branches interwoven, some tarp kind of helping get some protection. I think they're sitting around a fire, and it looks like my grandpa's sitting next to, I think he's like an army specialist, and they both have their winter parkas on, heavy coat, and grandpa's is not zipped up, but it's the parka because you can tell it's got the fur lined hood, and this army specialist that grandpa's sitting next to looks like he's smoking a cigarette. He's looking right in the camera. Grandpa's not looking in the camera, but he's just kind of, neither one is smiling. They're just sitting there. It's a really crisp, clear picture. 1966, I mean, 60 years old. 60 years ago, that picture was taken. And very good picture. Then we have another picture. I'll read the caption. Caption reads, Grandpa poses for a photo during cross-country ski training in the snows of Alaska, circa 1966. And you see Grandpa there. He's in his skis and big heavy boots. I think they're what are affectionately known as the Mickey Mouse boots, and they're the heavy duty, super warm, cold weather boots, and they have a little valve. And there's so much insulation inside them. They have little valves to loosen so that if the air pressure changes, if you're flying or anything like that, that you can release it so it won't cut the circulation off of your foot. But Grandpa's in his parka and his ear flaps down, and I guess he's just posing. He's not wearing his gloves. He's got his mittens, I think. Um, he's holding his mittens in his right hand, the heavy duty mittens, and it must be really pretty cold. And he's got his ski poles, and you can't even see the skis in the photo, but he's like, looks like he's getting ready to shove off and cross country ski through the mountains there. And it's mountains and trees and evergreen trees and snow everywhere in the Alaska sunset or sunrise. I don't know which one it was, probably sunset. And there's a couple other people in the background. And I guess the photographer left his ski pole sitting there. It's like a ghost holding the ski poles to Grandpa's left. And I enjoy it. It's a clear photo, another clear photo. And then right below that, there's another photo, and I'll read the caption and describe. Soldiers scale the wall of a glacier in Alaska as part of their training, circa 1966. And this looks really scary and dangerous. They have ropes and stuff. There's a bunch of people on top of the glacier, and there's a bunch of people, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 or so people along this edge of this glacier trying to scale it with ropes and whatever, their little climbing ice axe stuff, and big giant mountains in the background of Alaska, and that huge, barren looking land, just like rock. You can't even, it looks like there's no vegetation at all. Maybe in the faraway mountains, there might be potentially some trees, possibly. I don't know. It's just those big heavy duty mountains where if you look at the outdoor magazines where they have the doll sheep, the big mountain sheep of Alaska, that's what this looks like, that territory in the background where you're going to go out, do some sheep hunting. So, but back to the chapter. I didn't have a military career that brought me through to retirement. I was not cut out for my command as an Air Force officer in my unit, and I quickly came to that realization in my first deployment to Osan Air Force Base in South Korea. Not so much in what happened, but in the counsel I got from my commander, Lieutenant Colonel Heitmann. He told me of circumstances on a deployment to Puerto Rico that he was on. 2 airmen from his unit wound up AWOL in a Puerto Rican jail. Nobody knew where they were for 2 days. The strain of being responsible for those men was enormous. What could easily be a career-ending stain on your record because of immature men making mistakes didn't appeal to me. I got out after 8 years in the National Guard, happy for the life experience, but happier to have every weekend free in the fall for hunting. And then I have a photo here that I took, and I'll read the caption and try to describe a little bit here. This is a photo of the field artillery piece with camo netting. The 8-inch howitzer had just been fired and soldiers prepared to reload. This was my first summer camp training in 1994 at Fort Guernsey in Wyoming. And as the caption reads, this was my first summer camp for the Army, and I think I'd mentioned, or maybe, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'll talk about it now here a little bit more. And sorry if it's a little bit of a repeat, but this photo, I really like this photo. It's framed great, and it's got, I think that was one of our lieutenants at the time. I was a E4 enlisted rank 4, E4, a specialist in the Army National Guard, and this was an artillery unit. This is the 147th Artillery, and they got the camouflage netting above to try to hide the military artillery piece. And there's at least two guys you can see in the front there. One's got like a giant Q-tip, let's call it, and that's for helping clean out the barrel and wash out some of the debris from firing that shell, the 8-inch gun. And I didn't really have any training to be in the artillery. I went to my basic training and my advanced training, and I was a construction surveyor. And then they reorganized my unit, so I didn't have a job anymore. So I looked around, and they had some artillery surveyors in the artillery unit close to Groton, where my mom and dad were. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just see if I can get into that unit, and got in that unit. But I didn't have any training as an artillery surveyor, so I was just hanging around watching stuff, and not like an actual artillery man or whatever they do. They're the guys that do all the loading of the shells and the powder, the propellant, and all this stuff. And I was just there. I was just a gopher in the training at that time. But it's a pretty cool. It's cool with that camouflage netting that you see, the shadows it makes on the equipment, and then like I said, when the lieutenant is standing there, his back is to me, and he's got his M16 strapped over his shoulder, and he's got another bag where probably some paperwork or something that he's carrying around, a little olive drab bag, and everyone's in their camouflage uniforms and stuff. And 1994, 32 years ago. Yikes. And then we have another quote here, kind of in the middle of the chapter. Quote, leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done because he wants to do it, end quote. And that's from Dwight D. Eisenhower, 34th President of the United States and former General of the Army. So we got quotes from 2 presidents, 2 military men from the Army so far in the chapter. And then I have another photo here, and this goes along with the previous photo when I described the artillery gun. And I'll read the caption and then try to describe. These 2 photos were taken with a disposable camera and turned out very nicely. This photo shows artillery shells being unloaded from the transport vehicle. Each shell is just over 200 pounds. So this is like it's not like a deuce and a half military truck that you might see, where it's got the double wheels on the back and the canvas cover on it, the traditional World War II Army truck you might see, the great big truck when carry the troops or whatever. This is like a flatbed articulated truck. It's got giant wheels. It's got two axles in the front, 2 axles in the back. And it was carrying it's got a little crane on it too. So the crane is helping pick up these, the projectiles, as they're called, the artillery shells. Those are the giant pieces of metal that are launched from those 8-inch howitzers. And they're launched from the gun by bags of propellant. They're like gunpowder that launch the shells, and they shoot up to like, I don't know how far they shoot, 10 miles maybe? I can't remember exactly what all the details were, but they could launch for long ways. And they launch, depending on how far you want to launch, that's how many bags of propellant that you would put into the barrel of the gun. First you ram in, there's a little ram on the artillery piece that rams the projectile into the barrel. And then after that's in place, then you put the number of bags of propellant you want to launch it, depending on the distance. And then you have to adjust the angle of the barrel and all this stuff. There's mathematical calculations that do all this stuff to tell you where it's supposed to go and how far it's supposed to go and everything else. So probably way more than you wanted to know about artillery. And it's a whole science in itself about how to kill soldiers from a distance. It's very, very depressing if you start getting into it. Anyway, back to the chapter, back to my soapbox here. If it was up to me, I would make every American serve in the military, or in some capacity, to their country. I wish there was a service requirement that included swearing an oath to this country when a person turned 18 years old. I think this would reaffirm patriotism in this nation. As we still deal with racial tensions from that past couple years, and really for my entire life, I firmly believe that mandatory military basic training for all citizens when they hit 18 years old would assist us in overcoming the racial biases we see in this country. Enlisting may have been a rush decision for me at the time, but it was probably the smartest thing I ever did. It exposed me to a range of cultures and people that I would have never known without a military commitment. It's another regret of mine not speaking more candidly to Grandpa about military service. I received my Air Force office commission in 1997 by the order of President Clinton. I have a lot of memories about 2 months of training, all pretty good lessons in leadership. But mostly, I remember sending Grandpa an invitation to my commissioning ceremony. He couldn't make it to the event that was held at my training base in Tennessee, but I do recall that he wanted to send me a congratulatory telegram. That would have been pretty cool. Maybe for the sake of the story, I will say he did reach me with a hail and hearty congratulations via the telegraph wires. And I have a photo of my commissioning. I'll read the caption. A photo of my commission with gold bars being pinned on my shoulders in 1997 at McGee-Tyson Air Force Base in Tennessee. I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember my training officer's name. So it was our squadron's training officer. It was Captain something. It was a lady. And she's the one that's pinning my bars on my shoulders as being commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. 1997. I can't remember. It was the spring, maybe like April 1997. And I have really, really short hair. I shaved all my hair off to basically nothing when I first first had it out. And this is 2 months later, it's grown in. So I have a nice fuzzy head of hair there. Then we have another photo. And I'll read the caption that described Grandma, me, Garrett, and Grandpa posing for a photo after Greg swore in Garrett as an Air Force officer. The most interesting part of the ceremony, for me anyway, is that as soon as I completed swearing Garrett in, he outranked me. Photo circa 1998. So this was in the spring after Garrett graduated from college with his doctorate in pharmacy. And we're lined up in the Air Force recruiter's office there. And I'm wearing my Air Force uniform. I think, I can't remember if I was already a first lieutenant at that time. I think I'd been. It looks like I have a silver bar on my shoulder. But my grandma is to my right. She's on the one bookend, and there's me, and there's a big United States flag between me and Garrett behind us. And Garrett's wearing a light blue shirt and a blue tie with specs on it and blue jeans and holding his commission portfolio paper. And then there's Grandpa, and he's got a suit jacket on. And He's the bookend on Garrett's left there, and everyone's smiling. It's a pretty good picture. I enjoy seeing that. Sure, pretty sure my dad probably took that picture, and that was in Sioux Falls. I think we drove down to Sioux Falls to get Garrett sworn in, and later that summer we took him down to Alabama for his training. I drove with him most of the way, and then I flew back. But back to the chapter. Grandpa and Grandma did get to share in a special military ceremony. In 1998, I swore Garrett, my younger brother, into the Air Force. My parents were also there to launch Garrett's military career. And here we are now, 20 years plus later. Garrett is eligible to retire from the Coast Guard. An amazing journey for him that I would guess, similar to me, was likely inspired by the Colonel, Grandpa Hagen. So, and I had parenthetically here that Garrett did retire from the Coast Guard a couple years ago. Like I said, this has taken me a little while to get published and get out there into the podcast world, but Garrett is retired and he's gone back into the workforce working as a pharmacist for the VA, Veterans Affairs. So he's still working for the government and putting his veteran status into good use, helping other veterans. As an aside, there's another object Grandpa confiscated from a German soldier that he kept with him. Maybe it was his talisman, like my elk ivory and St. Christopher medal, that he carried in his pocket every day. It was a pocket knife. It was fairly compact, maybe slightly larger than the little Swiss Army knife I also carry all the time. And I had parenthetically, I carry a little tiny Swiss Army knife, the Victorinox, and it's got little tweezers in it. It's very handy if you ever get like a little sliver or something. It's really good tweezers for getting stuff out. Got a small blade, a small little file, and then it's got little tiny scissors too. And it's very, very handy little knife that I carry all the time. Back to the chapter here. The knife that Grandpa carried was just a single blade knife. The sides may actually have been ivory. I don't know. They had that color. The most distinguishable characteristic was the engraving on the blade. In contrast to the words inscribed on the SS dagger, this little knife had a foot kicking a ball. European football, soccer to us Americans. I'm not sure if anyone in the family has the knife. I'll ask around and see if that mystery can be solved. At least to confirm my memory of such a thing. And again, I'll add parenthetically here in my little comment is that who knows, maybe I just imagined it, but I have this recollection of being down in the den at Grandpa's country house there and along the bar, and I think he had gotten the knife out to cut something, and I noticed it, and I asked if I could look at it, and I inspected it. And it was really left an impression on me, if it did happen, or if maybe I just imagined it. But anyway, I'd like to track down that knife and check it out, get some photos of it, maybe add to some updated edition in the future sometime. A treasured memento I have from Grandpa is his Army-issued 1911 Commander Colt 45. I bought my own Beretta 9mm pistol to have as a commander pistol when I received my commission as an Air Force officer. That was the standard issue for the Air Force at the time. Grandpa's pistol is a cherished item. It's one of those things that brings the memory of Grandpa to life when you hold that pistol in your hand. I hope everyone has a similar object from a loved one that they can hold and provide that same emotion. And I have a photo of that pistol here, part of the record. And I'll read the caption and talk about it just a little bit. Caption reads, photo of Grandpa's 1911 Commander Colt 45 with original box. I highlight the pistol's original box in its near mint condition because Grandpa was one of the most meticulously organized persons I ever knew. I wish I had a small fraction of his attention to detail. And it's this beautiful Colt 45 1911 model. It's a semi-auto. I don't know what it holds in the magazine, maybe 12. One in the chamber, maybe 13, something like that. But it's just really awesome pistol. And it's in the box. It's photographed and it's laying in the box, and it's got the little Colt emblem on the top of the box, and it's opened. I think it's just a flip open box. It's like one piece and you just flip open the top. And then in the bottom of the box where the pistol is, it's Colts Manufacturing, Hartford, Connecticut, USA. Just a great, great weapon. But back to the chapter. I don't think Grandpa had much choice but to enlist in the military. He was going to be drafted anyway. For me, the military is another one of those questions I ponder as I reflect on the decisions I have made in my life. The decisions that made me who I am. If my military commitment wasn't the biggest factor that determined the path of my life, I'm not sure what it was. I think for Grandpa, the military was also that element in his world. It's probably safe to say, outside of his family, wife, and kids, the most influential aspect of Grandpa's life was the impact of his enlistment into the military. And here I have a series of photos that were famous for being in Grandpa's den, and I'll try to describe. I'll read the caption, then try to describe a little bit. First one is image of the commander above and the forward observer below by military artist George Finley, hung on the walls of Grandpa's den in the country house. In the image showing the SS dagger hanging on the wall, you can catch a glimpse of the commander print. And I have these two images on one page here, and the top image is the commander, and it's got like this. He's the captain, and he's got the whole platoon behind him, and it's this guy immaculately dressed, and he's standing like on a pile of paperwork and rank insignias and everything you could imagine lined up underneath his boots, and behind him is like the rest of the platoon, including the Jeep driver. And there's a guy holding a cup of coffee and a coffee pot, and there's like the first sergeant yelling at somebody over his shoulder and pointing, and it's just this classic image image of the commander. I guess I don't know if you want to say superiority or the elite. Everyone else is a little bit disheveled, and not the commander. He's got like his hand in his blouse, the military green blouse, like Napoleon almost. It's just kind of comical. And that's this artist. He had kind of taken a little satirical, funny, comical look at the military, and the image below that Grandpa had these mounted prints images on his walls, and this one's called the Forward Observer. And on the print itself, at the top of the print, it says the greatest killer on the battlefield. And this is the forward observer because in artillery units, they have people that are called the forward observers. So they need to be out front near where the enemy is, and they have radio, and they'll call back in the position of the enemy so that the artillery guns can fire. They fire for range, basically, quote, range, and they shoot their first artillery shell. And then the forward observer sees where it lands, and then he makes the adjustments and radios back to tell the artillery guns how to adjust to be able to hit the enemy. And this forward observer, he's like, it's just this guy that the soldier, and he's just all disheveled and tattered. His eyes are bloodshot. His helmet's all beat up and got holes in it. He's got camouflage and little flowers sticking in it, trying to help camouflage his position. And then behind him is all the enemy troops, and they're just like all sickly sad. And behind the enemy troops, there's smoke rising up from the artillery shells. And in front of the forward observer, he's got in his little foxhole he's built. It's his post where he can call in. It's got the radio. It's got like a martini glass. It's full a little compass, map, a jackhammer, a knife with the brass knuckles on it, and an arrow. It's everything you can picture that you'd have as a soldier that's out front all by himself out there trying to help helped the platoon fire the artillery. And then the final one that Grandpa had on his wall, this was a caption says, another print from military artist George Finley highlighting Grandpa's military training, artillery. And it's got it's this little comic-esque kind of artwork to it. And it's got a little label on it, says, artillery lends dignity to what would otherwise be a vulgar brawl. It's got this, I don't know, like a effete, feminine, let's call him like an English soldier with high boots, red pants, and red Armada hat with epaulets on the shoulders with braids on it and a sword. And he's leaning down to fire a tiny little cannon, and there's a little pile of cannonballs beside it. And he's aiming this cannon into this, just like a bloody battle of, 25 troops on each other, hitting people with shovels and knives, and this guy throwing a grenade, and there's some guy diving in, and it's just like this terrible bloody battle, and this guy's about to shoot a cannon into it, adding dignity to war, if you will. And then I have another photo here, and this is just the caption reads, Grandpa's dog tags atop a wooden box that holds uniform rank insignia. And it's just this little, finely crafted wooden box with the design on it. And there's a little, I don't know, whatever it is, leather in the corners of the small. It's probably like a foot. I'd say it's probably 8 inches by 8 inches box. And on top of it, that's where Grandpa, he kind of just had his dog tags from his military service sitting on top. And then inside the box, if you open it up, you could see that he had all these insignia for his lieutenant colonel rank, which is the oak leaf cluster that's silver. And then he had some older rank that he had used in past service, captain bars, and the major rank, which is the gold oak leaf cluster instead of the silver. And it's just a really nice memento, nice cherished memento to hold souvenirs from Grandpa's military service. I have that someplace. I don't know where that is, but I think I grabbed that out of the basement from one of the basement bedrooms when my mom moved out of the house, and I kept that and held on to it. So here we are. We're just about an hour in. I just have this last couple paragraphs here. Finish up this chapter, the military. So back to the end here, and let me get on my soapbox a little bit and finish out the chapter. It's hard for me to believe that we still have wars. As Eisenhower warned, beware of the military-industrial complex. We refuse to take heed. I end this chapter with a quote that is useful for all wars, past, present, and future. Quote, it is only those who have neither fired a shot nor heard the shrieks and groans of the wounded who cry aloud for blood, more vengeance and more desolation. War is hell. End quote. That's Major General William Tecumseh Sherman, U.S. Army. And I did have a note from my editor, Gwyneth Duncan. She's originally from the state of Georgia, and she had a note talking about, and she put on there, just not an editorial note, but just a note from her personally about General Sherman and this, the Union Army coming to Atlanta and burning it down just because they could. And she had maybe some disparaging comments about that, about how that they just burned Atlanta down. I guess just to punish civilians. I mean, there was no need to do it. They just did it because they were there and angry. So I think that the lesson was a little overdone with that. Who am I to say? That was 160 years ago, whatever it is now. But that was, talk about a war of all wars, just horrible. Get on my soapbox here a little bit, but Am I going to blame him for doing it? I do blame him for doing it. Um, can I understand why he did it? Yeah, but I think they got rid of most people. I think most civilians got away from the burning. They warned them they're going to do it, and then they did it. And I think that this quote from General Sherman though sums it up. And I think most people just are familiar with that the last three words of the quote: "War is hell." And if there's anything I could do to stop all wars, I would do it in a heartbeat. So that's the end of the chapter. And I don't know how many times I've said that's the heart of the memoir. This might be the heart of the memoir, and by all accounts, it should be, because that's one of Grandpa's primary nicknames of all time was the Colonel, and it was really, I think, it's the high point of his life, and the where he found meaning, I guess, in a lot, and how he could share that with other people too, was being in the military. And I think, I'm very proud of my grandfather and that heritage, and my inheriting that heritage, and proud of my brother serving, retiring from the military, and proud of my dad. He served in the Air National Guard. So it's a point of pride for me to be able to talk about this chapter and have a chapter titled "The Military" in the memoir, and have a lot of pictures. And I have just so many more pictures of Grandpa out on his military deployments and military training for the National Guard. Of it, just put a few in there. And like I said, I probably should have divided this up a little better and maybe gone in a little more depth into some of the specific National Guard, specific just active duty World War II stuff. But I did it this way, and I think it came out pretty good. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm not gonna add anything else. No other sections today. I'm just gonna wrap it up and end it here. So that's your Thursday, February 5th, 2026 podcast for the Colonel and the Kid. 5 days in a row, I did it. Still having some problems with my my podcast studio. I screwed up the thing yesterday by closing it too soon, so I lost all my notes and takeaways that I like to put into the published podcast and the transcript. I hit the wrong button. Luckily I saved the video and the audio, but somehow I managed to lose everything else. I'm gonna hopefully avoid doing that today. But it's a good chapter today. I'm glad we're keeping moving on here. And thanks for listening. I'm just end it here. And we don't say goodbye. We just say see you next time. And I leave you with these words: be glass half full guy or gal. Be assertive, be positive, be proactive. As always, knock and the door will be open to you. Seek and you will find. Ask and you shall be given. That's it for today. I'm gonna call it good. Got to get out there and do some more dog sitting. I think if I have a shorter chapter tomorrow, I'm gonna tell a couple stories about dog sitting so far and how at least there's some humor provided in the business of dog sitting. I don't think I'm going to try to incorporate and branch out into doing that as a full-time business, but I will try to share some of those things. I should write them. I should make some notes so I don't forget and put them into the podcast tomorrow. Hopefully it's a little shorter chapter. Like I said, that was a big one. Lots of photos and lots of words, and I'm glad I'm through it. So have a great rest of your day. It's the pre-weekend, Thursday evening. So let's start preparing for the restful weekend coming up. Super Bowl 60 this weekend. And I will mention before I completely sign off here that hopefully get Garrett and AJ in our Super Bowl predictions. Maybe Saturday. Maybe I can contact Garrett today, and then maybe on tomorrow's podcast I can talk about that and assure you that's going to happen. Otherwise, maybe they can just email me or text me their picks, and I can just talk about that separately. But big cultural event, Super Bowl. It's the NFL. It overtakes everything for about 6 or 7 months on the year, and enjoy talking about it. And I want to display. I do have this sitting right here. It's a tape measure of the Minnesota Vikings insignia on it right there. It's great. NFL rules all my life, all the time, as you can see. So anyway, tip of the cap as we sign off. The podcast hat, put it back in the box when I get done here, and see you tomorrow.